Welcome to today's episode. It is Friday, December 19th. There are only 12 days left in 2025, so now is the time when we are going to look at the worst shows of the year. On our podcast, we usually discuss a different series every show. One of us is tasked with background research, and the other is in charge of recapping and ranking the show. This year, we collectively watched exactly 100 series, 50 series each. The full list is in the description for those who are interested. Today, we have each picked 5 least favorite episodes and 5 least favorite shows from the 50 that we were responsible for rating. To avoid one show from sweeping the board, we cap each series to one appearance, whether it be worst episode or worst show. How do you think that this crop compared to last year?
I'm a lot more prepared this year because usually whenever we do this list, I make it like a week beforehand whenever we do the best of worst stuff and I work from it from memory.
Are
But
you saying you procrastinate?
yeah, yeah,
Oh,
but
no.
but actually this year I like kept to it and like throughout the year I was switching out different shows with like
You
the
you had
episodes and
better
series
shows
lists.
than I did this year. Like, looking at the ones that I was in charge of and then looking at our ratings, it was just like, you got a hell of a good
Oh,
crop.
when we get to the best ofs, because again I've been working on it all
But
year,
but
I
even the
absolutely
worst
agree.
ones, like some of the ones that I would have definitely put onto mine and even over mine, but I do think I also got some good worst. There's just so much mid-tier content out there
Yes,
where it's
yes.
like we want so it's getting tougher every single year because there's shows that it saves itself in a way, but at the same time just makes it so that it's like down the middle, hard to rate, good or bad.
There are 5 shows that I'm pretty sure that you have on your list, and by the end, I'll see if I got all 5
Well, I
correct.
can give you some honorable mentions that didn't make my list.
Yeah, I have some too.
Some people would think Suits LA. I was not going to include that. I enjoyed the pilot of Suits LA. I found it to be so bad that it was good.
You gave it an 8 out of 10 if I
It was an 8
remember.
out of 10 pilot to me. I was laughing. Long Bright River, that is one that might be on some people's list because of just the way they handled, I think, addiction in that show has been
That
polarized.
was one of the weeks that, like, I think that was the only week that there was 3 shows released, and they all took place in Pennsylvania, and that was one of them, right?
Right.
Because the other
And
2 were Dope Thief
And
and I
it
think
would
that
have
was
made my list, but there's something else on the list that's too similar to it. So
Huh,
I
okay.
couldn't put it on there. How about yours?
So I only have one honorable mention or dishonorable mention, but I should say that if Dexter Original Sin came out this year, it's not on my list because it came out last year. But if it came out this year, it would be definitely on there. But my one is Robin Hood. Vulture titled their review "Not My Robin Hood," and I couldn't agree more because the plot does follow the famous Saxon Forester and how his origins. But this is a shallow retelling with pompous dialogue, way too many characters. The pace is so dull, and I just felt like that was a real shame because I did like the set design and some of the acting in the show.
And you also like the BBC series that came out
Yes,
like 15 years ago or whatever.
2010, I think. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, how do you want to do this? Episodes or shows first?
Let's do episodes, but let's do what we did last year where we went 5 to 2 for both and then keep our number ones.
Okay. Do you want to go first or should I?
I'll go first.
Go ahead.
Yeah, so I read and watched the movie for this, but the Rainmaker TV series, the pilot, Another Rainy Day. And the plot is a hotshot new lawyer, Rudy Baylor, gets canned from his cozy big law firm and has to work as an ambulance chasing lawyer.
You said you watched the movie that was the Matt Damon movie with Claire Danes.
Almost a direct adaptation of the book.
The John Grisham book, which is kind of an airport novel. That guy loves lawyers. And then on USA, which also loves to be like white collar crime. They had white collar, they had psych. They want to do characters welcome again. So they were pushing for that.
They kept the name and they kept the names of the characters, but it felt like this was very loosely inspired because there was a lot of like cliche backstory. Like Rudy, I think, is a little bit younger, and also he has an abusive stepfather, which I didn't feel like the show needed to add.
Added fluff, yes.
Also, there was like a B storyline about this guy named Melvin, who's an arsonist, and we learn a murderer played by Dan Fogler, who is a actor that I really like. But it felt like it's going to be a full season story arc, and I feel like it should have just been like an episodic thing.
In the original, I think it was that the insurance company was like not honoring what it had promised to a
Right.
guy, and then by the end of the movie, it was like a tragic. Matt Damon was trying to fight for him the whole time, but you're saying that this time this white collar lawyer who's now an ambulance chaser, is trying to catch a murderer.
Yeah.
That's an interesting spin.
Well, I don't know how exactly the Melvin storyline is going to play out, but also Bruiser. Bruiser in the book is a very shady dude. And
He's a mentor, though.
He's a mentor, but he's also like not good. Like he's very much in bed with like a lot of mobsters and everything. He's 350 pounds. And here they turn that character, who is one of my favorite characters from the book, into a middle-aged snarky woman.
Yeah, I think in the movie it was like Mickey Rourke or someone playing him.
And I thought that Mickey Rourke was way more accurate to the book than this woman was. I don't know why they didn't just make her a completely new character. I think that would have worked out better. Also, there was a very strange scene 10 minutes in where Rudy Baylor gets fired, but we never really see why.
He gets fired in the movie too, right?
Yes, but like if you actually see why it happens in the movie, in the book, it just like it literally came out of nowhere. Or sorry, in the TV series, it came out of nowhere.
Okay, I kind of remember that too, because like John Slattery walks in and he's like challenging. They're both challenging each other,
Right?
But it seems like things get resolved. And then in the next scene, he's talking to his girlfriend, and the girlfriend's like, "I'm so sorry you got fired."
Yeah,
it's like, where did that scene go?
Leo Drummond fires him, but he even concedes at the end of the scene prior, so it didn't make a lot of sense. But that's why I saw my number 5.
So that's your number 5. Perfect example, because it does show that we're going to talk a little bit about the episodes if we remember them well enough. And so if anybody doesn't want these spoiled when we come across them, just skip ahead a little bit. My number 5 is the pilot about a golf show where the main character, played by Owen Wilson, doesn't even pick up the club to play golf. Like he swings a few times, but he doesn't actually show off his skills when he is supposed to be this washed up star. That's all I was waiting for to see in the pilot. It's 45 minutes. That's too long for a lighthearted comedy. It does nothing to dispel people calling it a cheap version of Ted Lasso or a ripoff of Shrinking as far as the trauma that he's going through. Because I think that guy was had lost his wife, and Owen Wilson's character has lost his son here. And it's filled with tropes. You've got the ex-wife, you have the dead kid, the deadbeat dad, the angsty teen, the washed up sports star, like I said. And it's a testament, too, that the shows that end up on these worst ofs don't necessarily have to be just terrible shows altogether, especially in the worst episodes. Like, they can redeem themselves. By episode 8, without giving away too many spoilers, like Timothy Oliphant is in that episode. That was a great episode. And the show, I think, does get better as the season goes on, and that's why I got a season 2. But the pilot, I think, fumbled out of the gate. And it's not like I hate Owen Wilson. I'm not Quentin Tarantino over here going after his acting. But I felt like after seeing Loki, that we were going to like see a different evolution of Owen Wilson and him being able to adapt certain characters. No, he just goes right back to his very common portrayal. Yes. So that's my number 5.
I'm surprised to see Stick on your list, because I mean,
think it does a decent job of kind of like showing that mid-tier TV can be really bad. Yeah. Like, they had a big budget, they had big actors, but I'm not giving Apple a pass. And I really don't give Apple a pass this year. There are going to be several Apple shows on here.
Okay, so that should be interesting. My number 4 was Bookish, Episode 2, Slightly Fox, Part 2. Bookish has to be one of the worst titles of 2025, maybe the worst title.
Well, it's on a network called You and Alibi.
It comes across as so dull. Who wants to watch a series called Bookish?
People who are tuning into You and Alibi.
Oh, God, no. And the reason it's called that is because Gabriel Brooks is a bookshop owner. That's his name, and he's a detective investigator. Mark Gatiss, and he's an actor that I really like. I like him from Sherlock. But here he is playing a detective along with his ex-convict Jack, who's investigating a homicide of George Harkup. Mm-hmm. And it just feels like, because again, this was a 2-parter, that they were cramming resolutions that didn't feel deserved. The episode suffers from poor structural balance. The big twist of who did it with Eric and Enid, these people that run a bakery shop, you see a mile away. It's shocking how the characters talk for so long, almost in riddles in this show, and yet they say nothing at all.
So it sounds like it was like the most boring show to you of the year.
Yes, and it was the easiest to pick up on like context clues as to who did it throughout. I don't care anything about this show.
So the tail end episode 2 of Bookish, not the pilot, the second episode.
Yes.
All right. Kind of similar to this, which is also a second episode called Wind of Change. That's the name of the episode. When a plane full of the most dangerous criminals on the planet crashes into Fairbanks, Alaska. Only one man can stop them. It's Jason Clarke, starring as Deputy U.S. Marshal Frank Remnick. This was in Apple's other show, Last Frontier. And this one started off with a lot more action, and I'm giving the pilot a pass. Sam Hargrave, who you talked about in the episode that we talked about, stunt guy, so he was loading up the action sequences. He even made a cameo himself. That saved, I think, the pilot from me being able to see kind of the problems.
That one shot
But in the
fight scene.
second episode, it wasn't just... They had several fight scenes.
No, I know. They had the beginning
my
too.
thing is, like, at the end of the pilot, I think there's a dog ripping out a guy's throat, and I was like, whoa. But in the second episode, that's where the problems start to become very apparent. It becomes very clear that Frank Remnick is very incompetent as a U.S. Marshal. He's our main character, and it's unbelievable that every other agency out there is enabling him because his wife has been taken hostage. One of his best friends has just died in front of him. He doesn't know where his teenage son is with all these bandits on the loose. And the main bad guy has already duped him once in the pilot. And no one stops and says, does he have a conflict of interest? Is he in any condition to be leading this investigation? Also, in that second episode, his wife breaks free, steals the gun from the bad guy, and then the bad guy does that classic tropey bad guy thing where he walks up and just takes the gun back. You know, where he like intimidates them.
She's not going to be able to do it.
She had already stabbed him in that scene, so she showed that she has like the wherewithal, that she's not going to become a nervous wreck, and she just hands him the gun. It made no sense. So yeah, that's that second episode for different reasons, but also a second episode made my number 4 worst episodes of the year.
Okay, my number 3, the prequel to a show that was actually on my best of episode list in 2022, but it was Terminalist Dark Wolf. Episode 3, What's Past is Prologue. It's actually kind of shocking because as someone who didn't mind the first 2 episodes, they had their problems, but I gave them both a passing grade. It was shocking that this third episode was so substandard. It was so bad that it turned me off from watching the rest of the series, which I think is only like 7 episodes. Ben Edwards and Rafe Hastings join a team of people that you really don't care about. Yusuf, Mo, Landy, and Ish to try and stop a wannabe terrorist, Balaz Molnar, from selling secret parts to Iran to build illegal nuclear equipment. That premise sounds like it could have been interesting.
Does it?
Ben Edwards, I'm trying to be nice, but Ben Edwards, he's not even the main star of this episode. You have to follow this guy named Mo and Molnar's daughter, and then anytime that cuts away from that type of stuff, you just hear a ton of these characters telling, not showing any of their backstory. It's just always them like with like 5 minutes being like, this is why you should care about me. And you don't, and it leads to the most convoluted chase scene at the very end of episode 3 where they're trying to stop these terrorists, and it was, to me, just something where I was like, they should just focus on Ben. Ben is an interesting character. I like Taylor Quiche. I feel like that episode should have done it.
Yeah, I don't remember enough about that series to be able to like challenge anything that you're saying. So, okay. The third worst episode for me, any show that is going to kill off Adam Godley in such predictable fashion will end up here. This is the pilot of Down Cemetery Road. It was called Almost True, and it's based off the book by Mick Herron. Came out in late October, the show did, and it just has an inherently flawed premise. So I don't know if that also takes place in the book because I didn't read the book, but it revolves around a government agency's botched attempt to cover up the existence of a little girl named Dinah. Why is it doing that? We never know. That's kind of the problem. In the first episode, you should probably give us a little bit of a hint as to why this kid is so important. But what's worse is that we have to root for a Karen to save her. And when I say a Karen, her real name in the show is Sarah. It's played by Ruth Wilson, normally a very, very good actress, but she really isn't given that much material here. She's very unlikable in this role because she's harassing hospital workers, the nurses. She's pulling a hospital's fire alarm, which I'm pretty sure is like a misdemeanor or a felony, at least in the States, because she had no reason to do it. She's just trying to clear the hospital out. She's marching into the police station, demanding the file on an active investigation, all to check up on a girl that she's met for 10 seconds. And then we learn in the second episode that wasn't even the same girl. So like, it's a really tough way to start out a book-based show because it really just, I couldn't even really connect the threads as to how this was supposed to read if I was to pick up the book. So yeah, that's why almost true. The pilot of Down Cemetery Road works its way onto the third worst episode for me.
I remember that you were really mad that they killed off Adam Godley because it was so predictable to you.
Yeah, I didn't want to harangue on that point, but yes, when she hired the outfit and he comes in there and he's like, I would save a cat from a tree and I would save an ice cream man from a burning building. I don't know. but he was just so much of a sap that like they were like, okay, we're going to kill him off.
Okay, so my number 2 is the Runarounds pilot. A band made up of high school graduates attempts to achieve fame and success in the music industry.
So the Outer Banks sequel.
Felt like a high school show ran by a 40-year-old. But speaking of Outer Banks,
I think it was a 50-year-old.
For a young adult show that is action, I don't know. I just remember you watched the first 2 seasons of it, so you have a better understanding of it than I do.
Outer Banks, not Runarounds.
Yes, Outer Banks. This didn't feel like that at all. This feels like it was a completely different premise, even though you said that they showed up in the Outer Banks TV series, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, it is definitely more childish, I think.
Yes, some cool music can't make up for bland and cliche characters, checklist characters.
I think they would be happy that you called it cool music, though, because they are an actual band.
I know, but you have the leader, William, comic relief Pete, cool character Bez, the drummer, the crush Sophia, and they all just feel so underdeveloped. Also, exposition filled, and the references, this is the main reason why I said it felt like it was ran by a 40-year-old, are so old. Do you remember when they were going around trying to promote a party and they were using flyers? Mm-hmm. Kids wouldn't use flyers now.
He was like, that's radical, man.
they would use social media, and also the songs that they were singing were so old. I would compare it unfavorably to Rebel Day, a show a couple years ago that was on my worst episodes and shows.
I don't know what you're talking about. Rebel Day was excellent. I just love the history of Rebel Day, but yeah, the history here is much less depth.
Both shows, I don't really know what they were trying to accomplish here, and I feel like the Runaround should have gone through at least 5 different rewrites.
I think you just don't like musicals. I think that's what this is saying. No.
La La Land is my second favorite movie of all time.
Okay. So I think it's LA Land, actually, because it takes place in Los Angeles. Okay. Ransom Canyon, Minka Kelly's back in Texas, ranching families and their love lives. This is what you're seeing in this series, but the pilot, Don't Let Me Fall, falls. It's kind of like Virgin River, a Hallmark soap. There's a lack of energy, and really it can be excused for all the sexual tension because that's what most of these Western love stories are, is just there's no real good reason why these couples don't get together, except that we're, as an audience, supposed to root for them, right? So you get 5 different couple sets, and they're all kind of just circling each other, but not quite ready to kiss. That's fine. But one of the biggest, the main character is Josh Duhamel, right?
Yes.
Not Duhamel, even though it's spelled that way, but Duhamel.
Duhamel, yes.
And he's a grieving husband, and we see in the first few minutes that his son also dies. His son is a teenager. He has a birthday party. He goes out at night. It's stormy weather. I think it's against his dad's wishes. He takes his new car out, and he gets into an accident and dies. 6 months or a year later, his dad is riding down the road, and he's coming back from a tough date, and he sees these kids on the road. It's still stormy weather out there, and he does the weirdest thing. Instead of thinking, oh, my son died in a very similar storm, and these kids are trying to wave him down, asking for help, he drives right past them, and he's like, Darwin Award. That was his response.
Yeah.
He comes back much later to save them, but just that immediate thing turned me so off from this episode, because I was like, that makes no sense. Those kids ended up being his kids' friends.
So think if they would have died, it would have even been worse.
Yeah, because then they end up going to a shack where they almost do die, and it's insane. Don't Let Me Fall, the first episode of Ransom Canyon, is the number 2 worst show for me of the year.
Okay, so now I think we should skip our number 1s and we should go to worst shows.
Worst shows. This is the big category.
Yes. And full disclosure, my number 5 was actually supposed to be where the Runarounds were. They were on the number 5 slot for literally months, but then last night, I was looking at both these shows and I decided to flip them because I did think that this show was worse than the Runarounds. Number 5 for me is Sirens. It was based on the play LMNOP. Devin, a sharp-witted but struggling woman, impulsively travels to a luxurious island to rescue her sister Simone from billionaire Michaela Kiki Kell, Simone's boss.
Big cast in this Netflix show, right?
Yeah.
So you got Millie Alcock, you got Bill Camp, you got Kevin Bacon, Julianne Moore.
Yeah, and they really underutilized Bill Camp. But my main thing is that, like, even though these are talented people, all the characters are just terrible. They're terrible to watch. Devin is
Terrible people,
selfish.
like It's Always Sunny?
Yeah, almost. But, like, I mean, Devin is selfish. She's rude. She's annoying. And the only kind of grace she has is she's come to the island to try and help her, to get Simone to help her with Bill Camp.
Mhm.
But Simone is dismissive, emotionally absent, a brat, basically, so easily manipulated by Michaela. And the show might mean to make her this way, but it's still not fun to watch. And also, can we not have a gum scene as gross? Like that gum scene in the first episode where Michaela...
You're acting like everybody's seen this show. What happens in the gum
Michaela
scene? Yeah.
gives her already chewed gum to Simone because they're about to walk into
Also,
a
it's like Elf.
presentation.
It's like Elf when he's finding the gum underneath
Yeah, but it
the New York benches.
honestly, I gagged. It rivaled Homelander's milk scene in season 2 of The Boys.
I doubt that.
and it was
I doubt that.
there was some laughably stupid moments. I remember it was so overly dramatic, but it starts off with Michaela, and there's a hawk named Winston on her finger, and the first scene is Winston leaving the island, and at the very end of the episode, Winston is coming back, and out of nowhere, kamikazes into a glass pane window, and ends up falling down. It felt like something out of a Neil Breen, Tommy Wiseau film, and it was supposed to be very, like, symptomatic of, I guess, like, the differences between the rich and the powerful, but it just came across as so stupid. I was laughing so hard, so that's why this was degraded into the worst shows category.
Okay. All right. My number 5 is another Apple TV series, which and it's a historical drama. They usually get those right. Masters of the Air, Pachinko.
Oh, I think I know what it is.
It's Carême.
Yep.
The first celebrity chef. They bastardized him. They took a cookbook biography that this show is based off of, where it shows and presents him in the book, which I read, as meticulously obsessed with cooking and writing. He spent his entire life from being a kid in the gutters, raised in the gutters, like doing everything he can to learn how to cook and be the best dessert maker ever and create these extraordinaires. And he is also like a huge endorser of clean kitchens. He's the one who perfected the top hat they use because he wanted to make it into like the cleanliest places that they can go because he realized the connection between that and a good dining experience.
You have a lot of respect for him.
Oh, well, I mean, yeah, for as much as you can for a French cook like 300 years ago, but he's apolitical because a lot of his friends, his other cooks, they ended up dying in war because they were like dragged out there and they had to fight. So he was an apolitical, anti-war dude. And what did they turn him into in this show? An unhygienic, sex-obsessed, plotting, spying deviant who spends more time sticking his fingers into people's mouths than actually cooking. I took that line directly from our podcast, from the first one, because I liked it so much. But they stuck a pirate earring on him. You know, they turned him into a miracle healer. They acted like he was a major part of the French Revolution, that he roofied Napoleon's wife, that he promoted the first female head chef in France, even though that didn't happen until a century later. Like, this was a show where they read the book and they said, you know what the writer's main thing is? He wants to bring Carême to the masses so that they understand how important a historical figure he was. And he also wants to correct history because a lot of people back then thought he may have a spy connection because of all these rich people he was hanging about. It was going to happen because he was hanging around all these people, the Rothschilds, like new money, old money, Russia, France, like all over the place. Everybody, so the common people would be like, oh, he's a spy. Mm-hmm. But really, it's been debunked many, many times. And what did the show do? They said, fuck the writer. We're going to make him a spy. And so that is why Carême could even be higher up on my worst shows of the year, but it is number 5.
Factually inaccurate stories of what's supposed to be a bio series. Just keep that in mind because that's like one of my shows on my list. But number 4 for me was Countdown. Mark Meacham is brought onto a covert task force with undercover agents from various law enforcement agencies in hopes they stop a bomb that will detonate in Los Angeles. Now is
the whole season about this one
bomb? Yes.
Okay.
And honestly, I think that that's a fine premise for the show, but the execution was so awful for it. It felt like a worse version of NCIS.
It sounds a little bit like Quantico.
I hated how Jensen Ackles' character Mark had a will they, won't they with Amber. I remember I watched the 3rd episode and like one of the members gets shots, and I have absolutely no interest if that 3rd member ends up making it to the 4th episode or not.
Bad character development.
Yeah, just it seemed like they were almost beating you over the head with kind of, again, like Terminal Dark Wolf, just giving characters moments to say their exposition and backstory and why you should care for them.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, this I felt was like a terrible TV show. The most interesting thing about the show is that it was released alongside The Bear. It's not even about the show itself. And the countdown, I think the like, what's the words that they always use?
What do you mean?
The tagline for the series was every second counts. And that's the same tagline for The Bear. Every second counts.
Sure, because they always have the clock going. Yeah.
Right. But aside from that, yeah, no, this show I did not like at all.
Right. And that was on Amazon Prime, you said, right?
Yes.
Okay. So the show that I have to talk about now was on Paramount Plus. Correct me if I'm wrong about that.
Oh, yes. Okay. I know what it is.
Okay.
Yes.
This is another show where it's like they're kind of just playing fast and loose with history. What were they thinking? This is called Happy Face, and it's the perspective of a daughter looking at her serial killer dad. Now, this is an actual story, Melissa G. Moore's story. She's done a book or books. She's done podcasts from her primary source of herself, talking about growing up, not knowing about what her dad was up to until he was arrested.
I read it.
And yeah, you read it. And I listened to the podcast, and they decided to dramatize it for Paramount, which once you start watching this, you just become very confused and disappointed because you have a man who in the 90s was committing these terrible murders. He was 6'8", like 300 pounds, and he was in his 30s, and he was committing all these bad acts. And they cast Dennis Quaid now to play him.
I remember
Dennis Quaid is older now than the guy is now who's still in jail.
And he's only like 6'1". I remember I was saying they should have tried to get Randy Quaid back into acting because he's 6'7", and I think he was more like the actual killer, like physically.
They also changed the present storyline. Like they now put Melissa, so they kept the names. And Melissa G. Moore was all on board with this. Like she, in fact, pushed for the idea that if they were going to retell the story, which she'd already told a bunch of times, just make it up at this point.
Yeah.
So they have Melissa now working at a talk show. She's saving someone from death row, which never happened. She's interviewing her dad in jail, which the real Melissa didn't want to ever do because she didn't want to give him that promotion, that fame, you know? And then they're cherry picking facts from the book and the podcast to like stick on this character to try to promote that it's the same thing. Smoke did it right. You know, if you're going to go very loose with a plot, just like take it and completely change it and make it a different character's name and stuff like that, and just use interesting stuff. But don't use the same characters' names. And why do it this way? It just made no sense.
I think that the tone was the thing that mostly annoyed me. The fact that they went a campy way with it when the book is like harrowing and not funny in the slightest.
Mm-hmm.
So I understand why it's on your list. Number 3 for me was a Netflix show. It was 0 Day. Former President George Mullen is appointed to investigate a nationwide cyber attack that killed thousands. Let's run down the cast really fast.
Yeah.
Robert De Niro, Jesse Plemons, Lizzie Kaplan, Connie Britton, Angela Bassett, Dan Stevens, and Matthew Modine. There's more too, right? And it's one of the best cast listings perhaps of the decade, and you give them nothing to work with?
What if you'd stick them in paradise? I feel like that would have been great, right?
I mean, Robert De Niro, he gave one of the worst unimpassioned milquetoast speeches about unity in the center of New York. And that now, because of that, he's suddenly tasked with the biggest investigation I can think of.
Yeah, this one was another bore of a show where it was like you just kept waiting for it to make itself really good. But then it turned out, what was it, like The Irishman or the...
Yeah, I mean, like, let's take a step back and also realize that suddenly technology just not working out of nowhere was already done on NBC in 2012 with Revolution.
Okay.
And they are so Netflix is kind of late to the party, and I don't care about the breadcrumbs like the phrase, who killed Bambi?
It's another conspiracy thriller.
Yeah, and I mean, the show just squandered their opportunity with something that should have been great. This should have been a great TV series.
I agree with you. It would have made my worst stuffs as well. This one is funny because it's actually a show that I was enjoying. And it kind of goes the opposite route of Stick, where it shows that something can start off pretty well and then still make it onto the worst stuffs. So like I read the book for this, and it's The Better Sister, and it falls here because I was just so disappointed after a while. Jessica Biel, Elizabeth Banks, Corey Stoll, they do a good job. Amazon Prime released an 8-episode crime drama to a 9-hour audiobook. That's the problem. They don't say a picture is worth 1,000 words for nothing, because it's like you can only they use up most of the source material in the first 2 episodes, and those first 2 episodes are the best part.
I remember you really liked the beginning.
They stayed really close to the book for those, and like the parts they adapted made sense. But then afterwards, it was nothing but empty rabbit holes, boring meandering backstories, repetitive conversations, excuses for the sisters not to talk to one another, leads that are meant to just prolong the plot. It's exhausting. And the lawyer is awful. Unlike in the book where it made sense the decisions they were making, this lawyer actively tries to put her own client in jail, saying like she agrees that the court shouldn't honor his bail. If you only watch episodes 1, 2, 6, and 8, you should be okay. But
Okay.
it's all those other ones that you have to sit through. And if you've read the book by Alifair Burke, then you would know that like it's much better. The twists are much better. If you just go that route. Yeah, but like it's just the disappointment factor that drives it here into the 3rd spot in the worst shows of the year.
I think probably how I feel about that, and I'm not sure if it's going to show up on your list or not, but All Her Fault was kind of that way as well. I thought that when they actually adapted it to the series, it was a huge disservice because they like gave away things that way too early, and it was like so obvious by the end who did it. My number 2 show is a show that has a 4.5 on IMDb.
And see, this is what I mean by, like, you got the easy ones.
And it was number 1 for the longest time. I'll just give the plot first. We follow Riri Williams after the events of Black Panther,
really?
Wakanda Forever.
Disney, okay.
Where she grieves the death of her best friend, Natalie Washington, and joins a gang of thieves and builds a suit that has an AI version of Natalie in it.
Now, people did like Mephisto.
Yes, okay. I'll get to that in a moment. He is a huge reason why this is not at the number 1 on my list. But the estimated budget for Ironheart, do you want to guess what it was?
$200 million.
It was a little less than that. It was a guesstimate of $100 to $150 million.
Okay.
So why does every fight scene feel like a high budget college project?
Well, because it just seems like that's the amount of money that's anticipated for anything Disney or anything Marvel.
Yeah, but
at this
I'm
point.
saying with that type of money, like we got Loki, I think, for around the same budget, and this is just like awful to look at. The VFX is just it's so cheap.
They should have just done the 2nd season of I Am Groot or whatever that was.
I think they did do a second season. Riri is the most narcissistic, selfish, unlikable character on TV, and I'm supposed to root for a character that was expelled from MIT for selling students her work, breaking a dean's arm without apology, and joining a criminal gang, all within the 1st episode.
I liked her in the Zombie Marvel episode that she showed up in.
Yeah, but like this is 6 episodes.
Yeah,
this is and she's for a character that's supposed to be so smart. She never shows brilliance one time in the series, and she's supposed to kind of be like the Iron Man light version.
Right. I think her technology is what she's showing it through.
And I had to watch 6 painful episodes of this show, and it really says something that I don't remember any of the gang except for Anthony Ramos, who admittedly I did like in this series. But yes, the reason why this isn't number 1 is because Mephisto. Sacha Baron Cohen shows up way too late in the series, in my opinion, in the final episode.
To have some pizza.
But he does a great job. He's given like 2 or 3 scenes, so they use him very sparingly, but they're long scenes admittedly, and he was the best part of the series by far. His acting, his writing, what they did for him, it's like they just give us the Mephisto series at this point. I'm sold.
Okay, so that is the worst Marvel series you think that's ever come out?
Yes, I think so.
Well, they only have a couple more that are, so we'll see those in the next few months. But for my number 2, this is the trashiest show of the year. It's also, I think, if anybody's watching this, they're like guilty pleasure show, but it is it's like Sirens, but like way amplified. The Hunting Wives. It's about a rich lady in Texas who decides to seduce a married lady, and there's a ton of sexual overtones. It's funny, the like few series that we call like softcore porn, I've called softcore porn, is like Spartacus and this series, and they both came out as stars, except this one was then shipped off to Netflix. But it's like Margot is the main character. She's played by Maleem Ackerman, right?
Yep.
She's a sociopath, and she's playing Jenga with this new woman's identity. This woman who comes in named Sophie, played by Brittany Snow, and her identity is just up for grabs because she teaches her to lie to her husband. She gets her to fall off the wagon. She gets her to hit on a high schooler, to have an affair with her. And at the same time, she's also like Margot is also like hitting on this other high schooler, and it's just the most sleazy, creepy, messed up love story. It doesn't feel like a real TV show while you're watching it, and there's a murder aspect going on at the
Yeah,
same
right.
time.
That was the
But that's
first scene.
such a side B storyline. Like it's called The Hunting Wives, I think, for that reason. But really, it just feels like it's called The Hunting Wives, like she's trying to sleep with a bunch of them. Yeah, it feels more like The Real Housewives, and there's not a non-needy character in the bunch. And so for those all reasons, that it's number 2, my worst show of the year.
Okay, well, guilty pleasure, keep that in mind, because I think we should go back to now our number 1 worst up episode.
Sure.
And guilty pleasure, I said, because Revival, the pilot, Don't Tell Dad, which was based off a comic book that I read, and I did enjoy the comic book. You definitely could.
Is the pilot the one that ends with them in a barn?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, and it follows a sudden mass resurrection in Wisconsin. Deputy Dennis Cypress works to keep the peace while investigating a mystery plaguing the town. Where to start with this episode? The acting is atrocious from everyone. I think the main lady is from Winona Earp, which has like a cult
This is
following.
a very like you're
Oh.
punching low here.
I mean,
because
here's
it's got like no budget. You
the-
went from 100 and whatever for the Riri thing to this.
Here's the thing.
Yeah.
It's the acting is atrocious. The writing is absurd with horrible jokes. The special effects look like something edited off of iMovie back in the day. The twist at the end having to do with the sister you saw coming from a mile away, even though it is in the comic book. And this was an incredibly amateur pilot to an interesting comic that they could have done well. Characters make the stupidest decision, and it's not a great year for sisters. First Sirens, now Dana and Martha Cypress have
Better
problems
sister,
in this.
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, just it's nothing new, and I thought that it was a terrible pilot.
Okay. All right. So that's the worst episode of the year was the pilot.
Yes.
All right. For me, I'm not doing a pilot here. And it's like the premise to the show, you're going to jump on board here, is what if you went to pick up your son from a play date and he wasn't there? So I'm going to give the show its props. There were several episodes, the ones with explaining Sophia Lillis's character's background, Michael Pena's episode, where I think the story dragged, but it also like it supplied enough content. But the finale is where I'm going to, and I know that's a polarizing opinion because All Her Fault is like one of the most binged series this year.
It was a huge success.
But I
for
feel like
Peacock.
the finale makes no sense and it deserves to be up here because at a certain point, when this lady's baby is stolen not once, but twice from her by the same man, and she never says, I want to do a DNA test. I looked up how expensive DNA paternity tests are. They're like $500. She could have paid for it with her first paycheck that she uses when she gets the false nanny job, right?
Yes.
And none of this is making sense for anybody who hasn't seen it. But yeah, there's that. She decides, Marissa finds out that her husband is a psychopath, right? Main character finds out her husband is crazy. She has a recording of him incriminating himself for murder, for kidnap. He'd go away and never come back. And she decides not to turn it over to the police. And they try to give like this half reason of like, oh, she's scared of him in that moment. It's like, get over it. Just give it to the police and have the kid. Like, it's crazy that happened. They never explained some of the lingering questions about like Colin, I thought, bankrupted them.
Yeah.
So like, how did she retain money? Like, how is she able to survive? Also, but my biggest con here is that she decides to kill her husband at the end.
Right.
Which is only implied, you said in the book, right?
I mean, yeah, it's the very last scene.
But the way that they do it is that she uses his allergy against him in a public setting, and he goes into anaphylactic shock. And by the way, she just makes out with him to like get him sick.
Right.
But if he hadn't died, then everything would have fallen apart because then he would have dirt on her. They would both go to jail and Milo would have been left off in the foster system, which is exactly what Josephine was trying to prevent to begin with, was that he would be raised by bad people.
It's a disgrace what what the show did, especially with the book, which didn't even hint that it was the husband until the very end. And it just turns into this, like the last 100 pages of that book were so twisty. And I was like, if we get a really twisty finale, this could be one of the best episodes of the year in decades. And it was like, no, they decided to go a completely opposite route with it. It was by like episode 1 that you even realized that Peter was kind of the one that did it, right?
I think the bigger problem from what you had told me in the episode was that Josephine didn't really have a shot to redeem or stop what happened to her at the end of the book. But she did here in the show. She didn't have to go to the house with a gun to stop
And that was
she
all
could have
made up.
gone to the police and said, that actually is my son. And even though she would have sounded crazy for the first 50 times she said it, eventually the lawyer that she calls would have at least looked into it and then started to pull that thread, and everything would have fallen apart. But she decided, no, I'm going to instead like confront everybody, and that's where everything blows up.
It was just so dumb.
All
Okay,
right.
so now we're going to get to our number one worst show of the year. Do you want to start or should I?
Sure, I can start because we'll
Okay.
flip it up at the very end. This one is this year's Invasion. It's another Apple series. It was I honestly thought about moving into number 2 only because that's a prime number.
Yes.
And number 1 is not a prime number. This is prime target. And I knew as soon as I started the series that this was going to be an awful show. It's based off nonsense. It's not based even on a book. It's a conspiracy thriller, which Apple really, really struggles with. It's about a Cambridge post-grad student genius in mathematics who's secretly working on a research project about harnessing the true power of prime numbers, what they mean, and how the fabric of our reality is misunderstood because we just don't understand how prime numbers work, which again are just numbers that can't be divided by anything but 1, but remain whole, not including 1.
It feels like an M. Night Shyamalan type twist.
Yeah. It's a master genius show where no one is ever shown really to be a genius, like not in a provable way. At least with Three Body Problem, which not my favorite show either, but it's based on actual like some scientific like confusion out there. You know, like there's some Higgs boson. Like they could have done something crazy, but instead they just went with like, let's make the sum of numbers into something that can unlock the mind. It's Lucy. It's like we only use 10% of our brains.
The Scarlett
It feels like
Johansson
it's
movie,
based off a myth, and it felt so stupid going in. And from everything I understand, this show never got better.
Yeah, no, I remember that it was like every single article had the same tagline, which was like,
Don't watch
prime
it.
target doesn't add up or something like that.
No, but just don't watch it.
So number 1 on my list is the only show ever that I was supposed to watch the full season 2, but was done after the first episode. I couldn't do it. It has a 22% on Rotten Tomatoes. It explores the life of convicted murderer Ed Gein, despite the fact practically nothing past the pilot, the only one we reviewed, is even remotely close to the truth.
We're talking about Monster here.
Monster, yes, season 3.
Charlie Hunnam.
Subjecting yourself to this horror show, and I say that not in the way that Netflix was hoping that I intend to, will only bring pain and suffering. And any show that starts off with a character going home, getting into his mom's panty drawer, and jerking off on a small stool with a rope around his neck deserves to be number 1 in the worst show category.
It is for such a niche audience.
Oh my God.
It?
Charlie Hunnam has the dopiest, worst, goofy accent in the entire series, and the whole thing is just so gross and disturbing to be watching in the first place.
I have a morbid curiosity on who would be like my top shows of the year. The Hunting Wives, Monster, the Ed Gein story.
I couldn't imagine subjecting myself to, again, this horror. You would think after the Menendez brothers story and all the backlash that got, they would try to remain factual, but nope, they didn't even try. I mean...
Well, season 2 is coming along, and he's going to be, like, teaming up with a different serial killer, right?
Yes, but the rest of the series, and spoilers, but trust me, it doesn't matter from my research, is Ed Gein meets Alfred Hitchcock, never happened. Follows him becoming a Hollywood star, never happens. Ed Gein is a necrophiliac that was never proven, and he helps catch Ted Bundy, which also didn't happen. And
I'm okay with them like saying that he was a necrophiliac though, because like I get. It's funny how we're drawing a line on like, okay, this guy did the creepiest stuff imaginable, but like, let's draw the line at it. Like he didn't actually. I understand that is not factually true, but compared to then he became a star in Hollywood, that's where I don't get it.
He helped catch Ted Bundy in this series. It was like, what? And I say this as a fan of Charlie Hunnam. He was great in Sons of Anarchy. I find the fact that he was nominated for a Golden Globe in his role here sickening, and one of the worst decisions by a major award show since the Oscars picked Extremely Loud and incredibly close for Best Picture back in the day.
What's the Golden Globes equivalent of like the Razzies? You know, like the Razzies are for the Oscars.
Right.
What's the Golden Globe? Like, is it the Rotten Globe? Is it the...
I don't think that there there's an opposite thing. When I read that, because it's not even just the Golden Globes, it's the Critic Choice Awards too. I was just like, what are people watching? How can you see Charlie Hunnam's acting? I couldn't help but laugh every time he said something, and you're not supposed to because of how dumb he sounds.
When you go to Ed Gein's page on Wikipedia, though, now I can only see Charlie Hunnam's face in it.
I said in the podcast, he looks kind of like Barry Keoghan. If Barry Keoghan is like 10 years older, that's probably how he's going to look.
I don't know. No, I think it just does, like the makeup at least looked enough like him. But yeah, Ryan Murphy, he's just getting weirder and weirder.
Well,
and weirder.
if I remember correctly, it wasn't even Ryan Murphy, even though his production company
you're right.
shows up
It was
at the
like
beginning,
a
he wasn't
spin-off.
in.
He's creating monsters.
He wasn't even doing this season of it.
True.
Yeah, it was like
All right.
Ian Brennan or whoever.
Well, is that it then? Should we just run down our list real quick?
Yeah.
All right. So for worst episodes, I have Stick, Last Frontier. Oh, sorry. I should go with the episode 2. Stick, Pilot, Last Frontier, episode 2, Down Cemetery Road, Pilot, Ransom Canyon, Don't Let Me Fall, but that's the pilot, and then All Her Fault, which is the finale.
Okay, and so for the episodes for me, it was The Rainmaker, Pilot, Another Rainy Day, Bookish, Episode 2, Slightly Fox, Part 2, The Terminalist, Dark Wolf, Episode 3, What's Past is Prologue, The Runarounds Pilot, and the Revival Pilot, Don't Tell Dad.
And for worst shows, I have number 5 being Carême, don't watch it. I have number 4 being Happy Face, don't watch it. I have number 3, The Better Sister. You can watch episodes 1, 2, 6, and 8. And then number 2 is the trashiest show of the year, The Hunting Wives, and number 1, Prime Target. Absolutely never watch.
Mine are all don't watch it, but Sirens 5, Countdown 4, 0 Day 3, Ironheart 2, and Monster, the Ed Gein Story 1. My guesses for you, actually one of them was not on there. I thought Missing You might have a shot. I should have known about The Hunting Wives or Down Cemetery Road, but I did get Ransom Canyon, Prime Target, Happy Face, and Carême.
All right. Well, good job. Thanks for listening. We'll see you in the next episode, which will be our best of. So we'll be just as energetic, hopefully, talking about the ones we enjoyed the most this year.
Next week. Yep.
Next week. Bye.
Bye.